I'm going to do some series of videos as well as articles on the relationship of Mormonism and Freemasonry. Seems to me like it's been a recent occurrence that several non-Masonic Mormons have taken up the cudgel, as it were, to discuss the relationship of Mormonism and Freemasonry. Well, I'm both a fully endowed Mormon and a full Master Mason with my 32nd degree Scottish Rite. And I'm discovering that the Mormon non-Masons who choose to discuss this subject are simply not the last word, nor are they the best way to learn about Freemasonry, let alone its relationship with Mormonism and Freemasonry. So I've decided it's time to set the record straight, and I'm going to see what I can do about that. It's a wonderful subject, the subject of Mormonism and Freemasonry. It's a delightful subject, but it's a subject that if you're not a Mason, you're really not going to be able to put together the most accurate understanding and analysis. And I have discovered that that's the case with what I'm reading right now. Matt Brown's new book on Masons and Mormons, his article in the Journal of Book of Mormon Studies on the lambskin apron, various subjects. Matt Brown's a nice guy. I know him. I've talked to him several times at the fair conferences. He's a pretty good author when it comes to Mormonism. If you want to learn about Mormonism, he's pretty good. You could do well studying him. If you want to learn about Freemasonry, Matt's not a Freemason, and it honestly shows. So it's time to set the record straight on a lot of things that's going on with this particularly interesting subject. I'm going to give you just a couple of overviews about my overall impression of Matt Brown's book on Mormons and Masons and exploring the connection between them. And I'm going to share what I think are some of the serious, fatal, problematic areas of his book, because he's just so unbelievably wrong in so much when it comes to discussing this subject of the connection between Mormonism and Freemasonry. One of Matt's serious problems is the problematic assumption he holds that it is an either-or situation. You're either going to have Mormonism or you're going to have Freemasonry. You can't have both and be consistent. That's a false assumption. I'm both a Mormon and a Mason, and I'm fine with both of them. He compares apples and oranges in a remarkable number of instances in this book. This isn't an attack on Matt Brown. I think he's a wonderful author. He's written some really good books, The Gate of Heaven, Symbolisms of the Temple. He's written some interesting stuff on Joseph Smith that I would highly suggest you read. He's good for that. But he's not a Freemason, and his research into Freemasonry absolutely proves that to me as a Mason. And so, because he seeks to try to make Mormonism superior in every way to Freemasonry, he makes errors in both his studies of Mormonism, and his more serious errors are involved with Freemasonry. And we can excuse him of his ignorance in some respects about Freemasonry because he refuses to do the logical thing. If you're going to understand Freemasonry, the only consistent way you can do that is join it and see for yourself what it really is all about, what it really means. Matt Brown won't do that, and that's okay. It's his free will and choice. It's not a problem. I went ahead and did that, and I'm very glad I've done it, because it's given me a more powerful ability and insight to see problems when people expound on Freemasonry. And Matt Brown has his serious fair share of problems when he's talking about Freemasonry. Now, in all seriousness, I've been an LDS apologist pretty much since the internet began 15, 16 years ago. And I've produced many hundreds of videos. I've written many hundreds of papers for various websites. I have several websites of my own on this subject. It's a great subject, in my opinion, but that's my bias as a Mormon. But I'm going to propose something that I doubt very many people can logically and honestly disagree with me on these subjects of Mormonism and Freemasonry. We LDS tell people who want to study the LDS temple, there's only one honest way you can seriously understand what the ritual means. There's only one way that you can appreciate the endowment for what it is and what it does, and that is to go through it yourself. There is no other way. You can read every single book in print on the Mormon endowment, and you're still not going to fathom it. You will not be able to comprehend it. You won't be able to appreciate it, because your knowledge is only book knowledge. It's not the experience of enjoying the ritual. I propose the exact same logic for Freemasonry, and it's 3 degrees: the entered apprentice, the fellowcraft, and the master mason. Not to mention the 32 degrees of the Scottish Rite, and I haven't got to the York Rite yet. I will get there within a year. There is so much difference between book knowledge that, like Matt Brown has, and the actual living and experiencing the subject. You can read, as Matt Brown does, hundreds of sources on Freemasonry, and you still won't get it. And you won't be able to teach it accurately either. Because while it is impressive, you look through his books and you see his footnotes and you go, wow, this guy's really obviously a scholar on Freemasonry. No, he's not. He's nowhere close to being a scholar on Freemasonry or a proper teacher of what Freemasonry is, does, and what it's all about, and what it means to we Freemasons. He's pretty good with the Mormon end of things because he is a Mormon. He's done what it takes to really know about Mormonism. He hasn't done anything near that with Freemasonry. That's why I wouldn't suggest reading him as the final say-so. He's not. I have far more authority to say than Matt Brown ever will that he doesn't understand Freemasonry. I speak as a Mason who holds the absolute highest degree in the craft, a Master Mason. I also have the 32 degrees of the Scottish Rite Masonry, which is even a more phenomenal extension and ability to comprehend Masonry. I will include the York Rite into my understanding of Freemasonry here within a year or two. Without this experience, you're never going to understand it. It's that simple. I find it fascinating that Mormons will challenge the non-Mormons when they write about the temple endowment. They'll say, you don't really understand it because all you have is book knowledge. You haven't been through the temple. You will not get it. And we are correct when we say that. I am also correct as a Freemason when I say, if you don't do that with Freemasonry, you won't get it. The interesting thing for me personally is